morning.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning. So we're on the Gemara, Lamed Hey Amud Beis, 35b. 35b. It's the last in the art scroll. It's the last of the 35b. We're about 5 lines from the bottom. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines to be exact from the bottom. Gufa. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of Shmuel. V'chein Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. He said the statement in Rabbi Yitzchak, and then they said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan the same thing. What did they say? Shemen Zayit, olive oil, Mevarchin alav Borei Priya Eitz. Olive oil, you say Borei Priya Eitz. And interesting, different than other drinks, and we're going to have to see as time goes on the uniqueness of the olive oil, that it and the way some of the Mefarshim explain. You were talking about when you planted the olives for the oil, and that's why you planted it, and you will say a Borei Priya Eitz on the olive oil. Now, so the Gemara says, meaning generally you make a Borei Priya Eitz on an olive. And generally on a liquid that comes out of a fruit, an apple juice, an orange, you make a bar shakol niavaro. But here we see that in olive oil, you say a Borei Priya Eitz, correct? And the Gemara has an issue. The Gemara's issue is how could you say a bracha? What's the case of drinking olive oil? Olive oil, raw olive oil. Olive oil, you ever try to drink olive oil by itself? No, you can't drink it by itself. You can't drink it by itself. People use it as a dressing, right? Maybe the bread, right? But it's as a dip of something, but you wouldn't be able to drink it by itself. So it's not healthy. So the Gemara is going to very good. The Gemara is going to discuss this issue, and that's what the Gemara's issue is going to be. What is the case? We want to understand the case of drinking olive oil. The Gemara says that you'll say a Borei Priya Eitz on the olive oil. Heichi Dami. What's the case? Ilema de Koshasile. If you're drinking the olive oil, straight olive oil, the Gemara says Zuke Mazikle. Good morning, Ariel. Ariel, we had a request. Someone wanted to know where Mashiach is today. Yaron from Guadalupe is asking.
Good morning, Ariel.
Oh, he had to run. He's flying. He had to run. Okay, but you can tell him that Yaron asked for him. So Yaron is at the class now. So the Gemara says, what's the case? We just said in the Gemara that if a person drinks olive oil, Ariel, olive oil, he'll say a Borei Priya Eitz on olive oil. That's what the Gemara says. The Gemara says, what's the case? Ilema, the Gemara says that you're drinking the gashasele, you're drinking the olive oil straight. Azuki mazikle. Welcome, shalom, baruch haba, baruch habayim. To see everybody. So the Gemara says, what's the case? If you're going to tell me that you're drinking it raw, so the Gemara says, Bezukim Mazikle, it's going to cause you, Rabbi, it's going to cause you damage if you drink it raw. As the Tanya, the Gemara brings a braita, Hashodeh Shemen Shel Truma. A person drinks oil of Truma. That means Truma has to be only by a Kohen. Truma is for the Kohen, correct? I can't have Truma. Am I allowed to eat Truma? No, I'm not a Kohen, right? You have crops. You separate a certain amount of your crops for the Kohen. You separate Truma, right? Oh, very good. If let's say the Gemara oil of Truma means the following. Morning, I went ahead and I'm a Yisrael, right? And I went ahead and let's say I made oil. Let's say, right? I made oil, and I took the olives, I squeezed the olives, and then I gave the certain amount of the oil to the Kohen. That I have to give a certain percent. I have to give a certain amount to the Kohen. I mean, really, that the Torah says there's no amount. There's no amount for how much truma you need to give. Any amount you could give truma. But the person, the average guy gives 1/50th of his crop for truma. The guy with a good eye gives 2.5%, 1/40th of your grain, and the guy who doesn't have such a good eye gives 1/60th. Right? So truma, let's say you have a whole pile of wheat. You're supposed to give you give a certain percentage to the Kohen. So now, if let's say this oil was truma, was oil that was given to the Kohen as truma, the part that I had to separate and give to the Kohen. Truma is only able to be eaten by a Kohen. And truma is not allowed to be eaten by a what? By Yisrael or a Levi. The truma is specifically, it has a special holiness. And the Torah says if I go ahead, if I eat truma, if Yisrael eats truma, I got to go pay back the Kohen. Not only I got to give back the principal, but I also got to, there's a penalty. I have to give an extra fifth. Let's say I drank let's say wine of truma, right? I drank some wine that belonged to the Kohen that was truma. So therefore, I have to go ahead and give. Not only let's say I drank $10 worth of wine, I got to add $10 plus the fifth. Okay. Now, what about if I drank oil of truma? You hear that Shmuel Rave? I say Shmuel Rave because you have another Shmuel on the screen. There's two Shmuels on the screen, and we have Shmuel in the Gemara now too. He's the one who says about the olive oil. So the Gemara says that there's a difference. If let's say I'm going to give you another case. One case is I benefited from Hegdish. I ate something, so I benefited from Truma, right? I drank Truma. I ate Truma. So what's the law? If I ate Truma, and I had no right to do that, of course, because I'm not a Kohen, I got to give back the principal plus a fifth. Is that clear? What about if I damage Truma? I go ahead, and let's say the Kohen had a certain amount of crop that belonged to the Kohen, morning, and it was Truma, and I took the Truma and I threw it out in the garbage, right? Terrible thing the guy did. He took Truma and he threw the Truma in the garbage, right? He damaged the Truma. The Torah does not obligate you to pay a fifth if you damage the Truma. The Torah obligates if you, the Yisrael, went ahead and benefited. You ate the Truma, you drank Truma, that's when you have to pay an extra fifth. You benefited, so most probably the logic is when you benefited from the Truma, the Torah gave an extra fine. But if you didn't benefit at all, you were just destructive, you damaged Truma, you only have to pay back the principal. Is that clear? You hear the difference between damaging Truma and benefiting from Truma. Is that clear? Shmuel Rave, you got the case? Shmuel, you hear? There's a difference between damaging Truma and benefiting from Truma. Now,
what's the difference, Rabbi?
What do you say?
What's the difference you say?
Right, the difference is that when you enjoyed, when you had benefit, when you had pleasure, that's when the Torah gave a fine. They gave you a fine if you had pleasure. If you enjoyed the pleasure, you enjoyed something that doesn't belong to you, belong to the Kohen, you enjoyed the Truma, so the Torah gave an extra fine. And I presume, if I want to suggest the reason behind it is, because maybe the Torah wants to create a deterrence that you should not come to benefit from something that belongs to the Kohen, something even that you're not sure if it belongs to the Kohen or not, if you only have to pay back the principal, so it won't bother you so much if you make the mistake and you use it from the Kohen, because you only have to pay back the principal. But if you know that if you use Truma that belongs to the Kohen and you benefited from it, you're going to have to pay a fine, you're going to have to pay 20% above the principal, then you're going to be much more careful. But
Bye-bye. It's like the Shogeg B'Mezid, right?
What'd you say?
It's like a Shogeg B'Mezid.
Right, Shogeg B'Mezid, right. The case here of the Torah, we have to see more of the halachot, but the pasuk, I think, is talking about Shogeg. We have to see more of the halachot of this. But the Gemara is talking about, but here the issue is we don't want the guy, we want the guy who benefited from the Truma to go ahead, have a great day, Sammy, to go ahead and be fined. He's gonna have a penalty. Now, similarly, what about if I go ahead? So the Gemara says the following: if I damage olive oil of Truma, right? What's the case? Now, the Gemara gives the case, not only what about if I drank olive oil? If I drank olive oil, is that called I benefited from the olive oil? Or I just...
Good morning, Rabbi.
Good morning, Mike. Here's the question, if I drink olive oil, the Gemara says if you drink olive oil of Truma, you do not have to pay a fine. just have to give back the principal. Why? Because drinking olive oil, you didn't benefit anything. Olive oil, like we said before, Morris, is damaging. Mike, we're on Lamed Hey on the base. So the Gemara wants to prove that if you drink olive oil, it's not healthy. It's not food. It's not considered a food. You don't really benefit. It's damaging. Something you get damaged that you get hurt from. So therefore, the Gemara's question is,
from olive oil?
What's the case that you say a bracha on olive oil? Mike, that's where you're coming into. Huh? Olive oil on its own, the Gemara says it's damaging. It's destructive. It's not pleasurable. You didn't benefit. So therefore, the Gemara's question, Mike, is, what is the case? Everyone remember to call Mr. Haber when you talk about case, law, and reason. Mr. Haber always used to like to use that formula. What is the case? We have a law. We have a law, if you say butter creates an olive oil. That's what the Gemara says. What's the case? If you drank it raw, as Mara says, you shouldn't say a butter creates. It's damaging. Do you say a bracha on something that's damaging? You say a bracha on poison? Do you say a bracha that you don't benefit from? No. So what's the case? And the Gemara proves. And the Gemara proves that olive oil, here, Ariel, the Gemara proves that olive oil is not beneficial because it says if you drank olive oil of Truma, you don't have to pay an extra fifth because you didn't benefit from it. The only time you pay an extra fifth when you have something that belongs to the Kohen, when you drink something, when you have something that belongs to the Kohen, it's only when you benefit it. And the Brisa shows the contrast. What about if I took oil of Truma and one arrow and I put it on my skin? And I took the oil of Truma and I smeared it on my skin, right? You know, one of the things that we can't do on Tisha B'Av, we can't put oils on our skin for pleasure purposes. You know, like the ladies, they like to put a lot of oils on their, most probably on their faces and their skins. They want to beautify their skin. You can't do that. But it's if I went ahead and I took Truma oil, olive oil, and I put it on my skin, I benefited. Then it's just like eating. Just like if I would eat something that I would have to pay an extra fifth. So if this is called benefiting from olive oil. If I smeared it on my hand, that's benefiting. If I ate it, I drank it, that's not benefiting. Therefore, the Brisa says if I took the olive oil and I put it on my hand, and I did like, I have to go ahead and pay an extra fifth to the Kohen. But if I drank the olive oil, I didn't benefit. I hurt myself by drinking the olive oil. Therefore, I don't have to pay an extra fifth. The only time you pay the extra fifth is when what? When you benefited, right? So the Gemara says, the Tanya, we learned in the Braita, Hashot Shemesh al Truma, if a person drinks the oil of Truma, the case of the Torah, he drank it, B'Shogeg, he did not know it was Truma, Mishalem Esakeret, he has to pay the principal. If you drink the oil of Truma, he doesn't have to pay the fifth because he didn't benefit from Truma. But Hasaf Shemesh al Truma, if you took the Truma and you put it on your hand, that's also one of the things that you can't do on Yom Kippur. On Yom Kippur, you can't put oils, that pleasure. It's a pleasurable thing. You can't go ahead and put the oils on your what? On your body on Yom Kippur. And Tisha B'Av. Shemesh al Truma Mishalem Esaker Mishalem Esachomesh. If you put the oils of Truma on you, use Truma, and I'm a Yisrael, and I'm using the oil of Truma for personally, for pleasurable purposes, that I have to pay a fifth. So what do we see? We see clearly the Gemara's proof is that olive oil raw is not healthy. So why do I make a bracha? You do not make a bracha the same way you understand you won't make a bracha on poison. Similarly, you won't make a bracha that's anything that's damaging, that you're not benefiting from. So how could you make a bracha? What's the case that you make a bracha on oil, on olive oil? You hear the case? Everyone hears the case? Everyone, is it clear? Yes, Shmuel is about to ask something.
I want to ask because, for example, in Shulchan Aruch, for example, there are few type of foods that we cannot eat, for example, or it's bad for us. For example, mushrooms. It says in the Shulchan Aruch that mushrooms are not good for your head. It's not good to eat mushrooms.
Yeah, we have to know what the real.
But I still bless on the mushroom.
You still say a shakal on the mushroom. I mean, I think mushrooms is. there might be some side, there might be some benefit. You're asking, is the mushrooms, do we look at the mushrooms damaging? I mean, first of all, it could be also, Shmuel, that you're enjoying when you're eating the mushrooms, you're feeling some benefit, you're feeling some pleasure when you're eating the mushrooms.
Right.
And it could be when you're drinking olive oil raw, you don't even feel the pleasure. It's just too heavy for you to drink. It's not what? There's a certain diet that Akiva is saying that they drink olive oil raw, right? But how does it taste? Does the person really have? It's like a medicine or something. They're using it like, so we're going to see about if something's used. So let's see. Very good. So, but I like Shmuel Rave's question. He's asking a good question, but I would say that you're really benefiting from the, from the mushrooms a lot. There's a lot of benefit from the mushroom you're enjoying the drink of the mushroom. So, I'm not sure how clear the damage is. You're definitely having pleasure from eating the mushrooms. You're not having any pleasure, I don't think, from drinking the olive oil straight. So the Gemara says, good morning, Yosef HaTzadik. So the Gemara says,
morning, Rabbi.
Morning. Ella de ka'ochalei adei apat. Yosef, we're talking about what is the case that you say a bracha on olive oil. That's the Gemara wants to know. If it's the Gemara is looking to understand the case, what is the case? Raw olive oil, the Gemara says, is not healthy. You won't make a bracha on something that's not healthy. So the Gemara says, Ella de ka'ochalei, it's damaging. More than that, it damages you. It damages the body. Now, the Gemara says, Ella de ka'ochalei ayidei apat. Maybe the case is you put the oil on bread. You go ahead and you put the oil on the bread. And the Gemara says, the oil's on the bread, you will not have to make a bracha on the oil. Because you make a bracha on the bread, and the bread will cover, the oil is secondary to the bread, right? You will not have to say a bracha on the oil, the Gemara says. The ka'achle adei apat. If you're eating the oil, Mike, you with me? You have it in the Gemara? The Gemara says, 3 lines from the bottom, Lamed Hey Amud Beis. So the Gemara says, if you're eating it on top of bread, you put it on top of bread. The bread is the main thing. And the oil is secondary. Utnan. And we learned in the Mishnah, right? This is the rule. Kol shu ikar, v'imo tefela. If you have something, a main item, then you have something else that's on top of that item, that's secondary to that item, right? You put seeds on bread. Are you gonna make a separate bracha on the seeds? You don't make a separate bracha on the seeds. The seeds are bottled to the bread. So the same thing. If you put the oil on top of the you put the oil on top of the bread. The oil is secondary to the bread. Like anytime you take bread and you dip it into a dip, you don't make a bracha on the bread and the dip. The dip goes onto the bread. The bread, you make the bracha on the bread, right, Morris? So the Gemara wants to know, what you say?
Why the oil is not healthy to eat by itself?
That's what the Gemara says. It's too concentrated, most probably. It's not
to drink, not to eat. Just that, to drink. You cannot drink olive oil. You can eat it, mix it with bread or something, but not eat it.
Okay, why it's not?
It's too heavily concentrated, most probably. If you go take a look at a bottle of olive oil, you see, if you would want to drink a bottle of olive oil, you want to take a cup of olive oil and drink.
So,
it's too strong.
Joseph, take a cup of olive oil, drink it. Let us know if the Gemara is right or wrong.
No, the thing is, like, everything in how you say it, in minun, everything is like, you can have too much sugar, okay? But if you take a spoon of sugar, it will be okay. If you take a spoon of honey, it's actually very healthy. But if you take a jar of honey, you can be sick from that. So everything, if you take in the right measurement.
We're talking about We're talking about being nehene, having a pleasure, from either a cup of wine or a cup of olive oil.
So we're talking a
They made the
measure of a
bracha
cup.
for a cup.
But you were also saying about having pleasure, like Mike pointed out, Yosef. Are you having enjoyment? We said you're not allowed to benefit without a bracha. Are you enjoying the cup of the spoon of olive oil? It's very strong. It's very sharp. It's not and it
Rabbi,
damages. Yes.
quick question. It's 1 second. If you wake up in the middle of the night, okay, and you're thirsty, are you allowed to do the bracha and drink because you're going to enjoy from that drink if you have a bottle of water next to you? Can you at night, or you rather not do the bracha and drink because you have to do netilat yadayim and everything?
I'm saying a person wakes up in the middle of the night, and their hands are not, because you slept for a certain amount of time, your hands aren't
Yeah, I'm
clean.
sleeping. I'm waking up at 3 a.m. I'm thirsty. I want to drink. I have a bottle of water next to me.
So really, what I would say to do is to wash the tilat yadayim. Don't say a bracha on the washing of the hands. Just wash the yadayim and then say a bracha on the drink.
Yeah, that's why I didn't want to ask the question, Rabbi. So now I have to get downstairs, go wash my hands, and come back to drink.
I mean, that's what I would say, because you're drinking, you're benefiting, you're enjoying the water, right? You're enjoying the water.
You gotta take a pause. Okay. Otherwise it wouldn't be proper. It wouldn't be proper to just say shehakol and drink right away. No, it wouldn't be proper.
I think if you slept more than a half hour, you really should wash your hands. You slept more than a half hour, you should really wash your hands. But you would not say Asher Yatzar unless you went to the bathroom. If you went to the
Rabbi,
bathroom,
that's
you say
really good
Asher Yatzar.
sugya.
No. I'm saying if you slept, you slept, right? What was the case, Ariel? Guy woke up at 2 a.m. and he went to the bathroom. So when you wake up at 2 a.m., you're supposed to wash your hands, right, left, because you were asleep. And then you use the bathroom. You say Asher Yatzar afterwards.
No, that's if I was just talking about drinking, not about going in the bathroom.
Yes.
This is a good sugya because, especially in the winter when the air is very dry, so you wake up like maybe more than once, even in the middle of the night, just to take a sip, just to make your throat wet, So every time to get up and to do hand washing, it's like a little bit trouble, because then you breaking up your sleep also. Because once you got out of the bed, it's really like you woke up. You know what I mean?
Yosef, you keep the water next to your bed, so you don't have to get out of your bed. How do you like that? You can keep the water next to your bed.
Then you have small children coming, and like spilling the water all over the carpet. Then you have trouble also.
They're coming in the middle of the night.
They're moving all the night. Yeah.
Okay. We'll build a shelf nearby, Yosef. You're very handy. You'll build a shelf somewhere that the kids won't get to. Okay. We'll see more about this, but that should be you're drinking water, you're thirsty, you're drinking, you should make a bracha. So the Gemara says the following. The Gemara says like this. Ella de kashasile ayde anigro. The Gemara says you mix the olive oil with other liquids. Now I diluted the olive oil with other liquids, and therefore I'm going to have pleasure from it, from the mix of the olive oil with the food. That's going to be the case, and I'll make a bar priates on the olive oil. The Gemara now explains what is the case, because I drink it together. It's a type of it's a type of mixture. The Gemara is going to say, what is a nigron? It's the water, when you would soak beets. When you would soak beets, and the water that you soak the beet. Let's say you put water. You filled up a container with water, and then after you filled up the container with water, good morning, Avi, you put beets into that container that had the water. Then what happens is after a while you remove the beets from the container. So now the water now has the taste of the beets. Okay, you heard what happened? The water has the taste of the beets, and that that makes a good drink. Now you go ahead and you add olive oil to that water. And then that's the way you would drink the olive oil together with, just like, you look at what's the ingredients of this item, this food? The ingredients is, the water from the beets, that beets were soaked in, together with the olive oil, that's you'll make a butter priates. And now we're gonna have, now the question is, how much olive oil was there? Was the olive oil, and obviously the olive oil has to be, we have to see, is the olive oil, is there more olive oil than the other regular water? Because in order for it, olive oil has to remain primary, it has to, we'll see. We'll see. It doesn't mean that the olive, there's more, there's 51%, at least 51% olive oil in the ingredients, the main ingredients. Ingredient number 1 listed is olive oil. Ingredient number 2 is the water from the beets, and the olive oil is the main ingredient. So the Gemara says this, the Gemara says, the Amar Rabba Bar Shmuel, a nigron is Maya de Silka. It's the water of the beets. Anybody recognize the word silka? Remember on Rosh Hashanah, one of the things that we eat on Rosh Hashanah is what? Is people eat beets on Rosh Hashanah. Because why do they eat beets? Because the word beets in Aramaic has the letters Samach Lamed Kuf. You see silka? And it has to do
It
with
depends on what language, Rabbi.
What do you say?
It depends what language you say, sukkah.
Right, but this is silka. Right, it's silka is misale. Hashem should remove, has there to remove the enemy. So therefore, it's like we eat beets. Many people, one of the signs, people have apple and honey. They have pomegranates. They have fish. They have a head of a fish. There's many different signs on Rosh Hashanah. So Moroccans don't eat beets, but what? The Syrians don't eat beets, but the Ashkenazim. Some of the Ashkenazim, like myself, will eat beets on Rosh Hashanah. Because Africans, we don't know. We'll eat beets. I got the yarmulke from Africa today, everybody. Made in Africa. So Kiva brought it back to me. He wants you to put it on. So we got in honor of the guys. They get a good smile. Okay, so guys can laugh a little bit, have a good smile, and open up the hearts of the Talmidim. So that's what the Gemara says.
Rabbi, you look good. You look good with Africa. You start looking like me from North Africa.
Okay, very good. So what is it? So what is it? Maya. So therefore, beets is called silka. With salek, we should start to remove our enemies. That's why we use the beets as a good omen. So that's what the Gemara says. So the Gemara says that nigron is when you add the water. You add the olive oil to the water. Then on sigron is the kula shelki. A sigron is the water of all any types of vegetables that were cooked. That's called ansigron. If you want to, meaning beet water from the beets is called anigron. Water from all other vegetables that were cooked is called ansigron. A different, similar word, but a little different. But the Gemara here, the purpose of our Gemara here is that we're talking about the olive oil was mixed together with the anigron, together with the water that you soak the beets. So the Gemara has a question. If that's the case, if you add the olive oil to the water that you soak the beets, now we're on Lamed Vav and Aleph, 36a, Mabruk. We're on the next new page, new daf. So the Gemara says, "Imkain have that nigronika." The Gemara's question is, then if you added the olive oil to the anigron and the water of the beets is the main thing, and you're just giving a little flavor of olive oil, you're adding a little olive oil to the mix, and the main ingredient is the water of the beets. So then that is the main thing. Then the water of the beets is the ikar. And if I add a little bit, if I'm only adding a little bit of oil, then the oil becomes the minor ingredient, and the olive oil becomes the what? And the beet juice, the beet water is the main ingredient. And the law is you have a mixture, and you have the majority, most of it is one type, another thing, something else, you go after the majority. For instance, let's say you have a fruit cup, and you're eating a fruit cup, And most of the fruit cup is made of borei pri ha'etz. And they threw in some pieces of adama. It's mostly apples, oranges, tangerines in the fruit cup. And there's a little bit of a pineapple in that fruit cup. You go ahead and you make a borei pri ha'etz. Because if it's mixed together, if all the ingredients are mixed and you're eating it as one, you go after the majority. So the Gemara is, even though they're two different brachos, there's a bracha borei pri ha'etz and there's a bracha hadama, you go after the majority. So the Gemara's question is, what's going on over here? If the majority is primary, the juice from the beets, that's a shahako. And now you added to it you put a little couple of spoons of olive oil. So you should go after the majority. So why should you make a borei pri ha'etz? Back to the drawing board. We're trying to find the case that you make a borei pri ha'etz and olive oil. And the Gemara says it's talking about you mix the olive oil with this beet water. So what? But the beet water is primary. It's the main thing. It should go, and it should remain it should be a shako, not a borei pri ha'etz. That's the Gemara's question. Everyone got it? Mike, you got it? Avram, you got it? Yosef and Tzaddik, everyone should. Okay, let me clarify the case. The Gemara is looking to understand what is the case that you make a borei pri ha'etz on olive oil. Because the Gemara says if you drink olive oil raw, you can't make a borei pri ha'etz. Why not? It's not healthy and you don't benefit. It's damaging. You don't benefit. You can't make a borei pri. You don't make a bracha on such a thing. The Chachamim did not institute a bracha, something that's damaging that you have no pleasure from. Right, Aaron? The Chachamim did not make such a bracha on such a thing. So the Gemara says, what's the case of olive oil? What's the case that you make a borei pri ha'etz? What do you say, Aaron? The Gemara says the case is, Mike, you hear? The case is you added olive oil to the water that you soaked the beets. You had a container that you soaked the beets. You hear, Avi? You have some beet water. We'll call it beet juice. Because you soak the beets in it. We'll call it beet juice. This water is beet juice. And now you added some olive oil to the beet juice. You hear, Mike? Let me ask you a question, Mike. What's the main ingredient of this concoction, of this beverage? Is the main ingredient beet juice or the main ingredient is olive oil?
Sounds like it's
what you say? So the Gemara thinking that you didn't put so much olive oil in. The Gemara is thinking you mostly had the juice of the beets, of the water that you soaked the beets in. So if that's the majority, right? I have 10 ounces. 8 ounces is made out from the water from the beets and 2 ounces of olive oil. And then now I mix them all together. I got a total of 10 ounces. So what's the majority of the water from the beets? And the water of the beets, the bracha water of the beets is a shako. You soak the beets in that water, shako. You go ahead and now you added 2 ounces of olive oil. So the bracha should still be a shako. Because that's the primary. The water of the beets is the majority. Generally, when you have a food, if it's not made of the 5 grains, if there's no, the chamesh aminim is a separate law. If let's say you have a food that's not made with the 5 grains, there's no mazonos involved. Well, if you want to make a bracha on a food, you have to know what's the majority of the ingredients. If the majority of the ingredients is one bracha, and the minority is another bracha, you make the bracha which is the majority ingredient, like the fruit cup. I have a fruit cup, right? Yes. The orange is a shaka. No, that's a good question. Ariel is asking a great question. Ariel is asking, which we're gonna have to get to as we learn the Gemara more. What's the difference between olive juice, olive oil, and orange juice? Why do we look at other liquids? We say is Ariel's asking great. You should know there might. By the way, there might. You will see if you planted oranges specifically for the juice. You didn't plant it for the fruit. We'll see more about that. Yes. 10 ounces. Beet water. The majority. Go after the majority. No. Yeah, we're not going about no. No. We're not saying that. We're not talking about poison. No, we're not worried about the poison. No. We do a shackle, right, we do a shackle on oranges, right? Generally, we do a shackle on liquid. What? Right. So very good. No, we said if I eat poison, eat something that's not healthy. Yeah, but let's say it again. But again, obviously, true if it would be mezonot, because we say if you have, let's say, 20% mezonot and 80% not mezonot, the mezonot is primary. But that's only by mezonot. But if it's not mezonot, if it's liquids, if I have two different liquids, two different foods besides mezonot, and then you go after the majority, whatever the majority is. Right. Very good. So first of all, right. Very good. So here we're talking. Very good. Yes, very good. But now we're talking about we're talking about the water that you soak the beets in. We're not talking about the juice that came with that. We're talking about the water. There's something. Right. We're talking about the water that you soak the beets in. The water that you soak the beets in is a shakol. And now that you added some olive oil to that, the Gemara is saying for some reason you go after the olive oil, and therefore it turned into 8. And the Gemara has a question: why should you go after the olive oil? If the olive oil is the minority, you should go after the what? The majority. And the majority, let's say I gave you an example. 8 ounces was made out of what? 8 ounces was from the juice from the beets, from the water that you soak the beets in, and 2 ounces of olive oil was now you have a total of 10 ounces. So the Gemara's question is, why should you should say a shahakol? What do you say? You hear the question? Yes. Oh, so the Gemara answers, we're talking about a case that you added a lot of olive oil. Why? Because the guy had a problem with his throat. He had a problem with his throat, and he needed to goggle. What do you call it? The goggle. What's the expression? And therefore, he had more. So therefore, that's how many understand the Gemara, because then the majority is what? Olive oil. And if the majority is olive oil, then you go after the olive oil, and therefore you make a bracha. Whatever the bracha of olive oil is, but the Gemara says the bracha is for created. Right. So the Gemara says here, the olives, the way the commentators explain, you planted the olives for the juice, for olive oil, and it has the status that the juice has the same bracha as the olive, and the bracha on the olive oil. If you not that you didn't drink the olive oil raw, you mix the olive oil together with the water from the beets, and the majority had 10 ounces, but 6 ounces was olive oil. 4 ounces was what? From the water of these. Therefore, you go after the what? That's how some explain the Gemara. You go after the olive oil becomes the primary bracha. Becomes the bracha. You have one bracha. The Gemara says the Tanya. If a guy has a problem, so on Shabbat, we have the Chachamim said you can't take medicine on Shabbat. Medicine, unless a person's in danger. There's different cases. A person, if your whole body feels pain, you could take medicine on Shabbat. If anyone's in danger, if someone has an infection, you take medicine on Shabbat. Well, let's say a person, has a headache, but nothing major. Has a little ache. We don't take medicine for a little ache on Shabbat. Why don't we take medicine for a little ache on Shabbat? Because the Chacham were concerned that they will come to grind. How do they make medicine? You grind herbs, you grind different things together, and you make some sort of medication, small thing. And therefore, the Chachamim were concerned. They said on Shabbat, you don't take medication unless there's a real need for the, or if a guy, let's say, we have to go in bed. If he doesn't take the medication, he has to stay in bed. Then he could take the person needs to be in bed. He could take that medication to prevent it. Those are some of the situations that person has the right to take medication. A little ache, you don't take medication because the rabbis were concerned you shouldn't come to grind on Shabbat. Right? The Chachamim create certain things, and that still remains today. That law still remains today. So the Gemara says, so on Shabbat, I'm not supposed to do things that looks like I'm doing it for the purpose of refuah. for health reasons. So therefore, Choshesh Begono. Good. So that's a different. That's a good question. If it would be morning, have a great day. You have a great day. If you would think that if there's a concern something that might be a different question. We're talking about a guy has a local ache. It's just a little ache, a little pain. It's not enough. Not everything warrants the taking of medication on Shabbat. Anything that there's a person worried about danger of life, they can take any medication. Anybody who has a heart problem, a blood pressure problem, anybody has any real issue that's a question of life and death, to protect them, their health and their life and death. There's no infection, they take it. And anyone has antibiotics, they take antibiotics on Shabbos. The only thing is we're talking about a guy has a little headache or a little something, nothing of real nothing that's not making him bedridden. It's not danger of life. He doesn't feel it throughout his whole body. It's not something, Yeah, so we came to the conclusion, that's the Gemara's conclusion. The Gemara's conclusion is that we're talking about a situation where where he put a lot of oil, in the, that's how Rashi says. Rashi says you need to put in a lot of oil. So when you need to put in a lot of oil into this drink, then the olive oil becomes the major ingredient, and the other liquid that's there, that beet juice, that beet water is the minority liquid, and therefore the bracha will go after the main ingredient, which would be the olive oil. And that's the case of the Gemara. That's the answer of the Gemara. The answer of the Gemara is, what is the case of drinking olive oil? If you can't drink it raw, when you're drinking it in a way, when you're going to mix it with this beet water, and what are you doing it for? Why are you putting so much olive oil in it? Because you have a problem with your throat. That's why you're putting so much olive oil in, and therefore you're gonna, what say? Olive oil by its, again, you never would be able to drink. You wouldn't drink it alone. You wouldn't drink olive oil alone without some other ingredient. Because olive oil by itself it would be damaging to you. You can't drink it by itself. It's not healthy. It's not healthy to drink raw olive oil. Because the Gemara says olive oil is damaging. You go open up a bottle of olive oil. Try. You know what? The thing that you use for Hanukkah, right? The oil that you try to drink a little bit of that oil for raw. It's dangerous. It's olive burpee eggs. But the way you could drink olive oil is if you mix it with some other ingredient, and then if you mixed enough olive oil into it, therefore the olive oil will be the main ingredient. And if that's the main ingredient, like I told you about the fruit cup, when you have a fruit cup, when you have mixed multiple, when someone gives me a fruit cup, I ask, what is the majority of the ingredients of this fruit cup? Because I'm eating the fruit together, not eating the fruit separately. If they give you an apple and they give you something separate, I make a separate bracha on the apple, a separate bracha on the pineapple. But if I'm eating it as one thing, right? It's one cup, it's mixed, and every spoon is mixed. Every spoon, a fruit salad. Let's say obviously a fruit salad is a great example. Make a fruit salad. You have apples and you have this, you have everything mixed. Without a question, what's the bracha on a fruit salad? So you got to go after the majority. What are the most of the ingredients that are in this fruit salad? Are most of the ingredients in the fruit salad of butter eggs, or most of the ingredients of fruit salad they're not eaten individually and separately? They're eating it together. That's a good point. But we don't want to do the generic bracha when we have the real specific bracha to make. So if we can make the specific bracha on the fruit salad, so they will make the specific bracha on the fruit salad. So the Gemara says, just like, people make the mistake, Ariel, Akiva, people make the mistake, they think, you know what, shahakol covers everything. So you know what, I'll make a shahakol on everything. That's wrong, right? Because you're supposed to learn what the proper bracha to make on every food. You're not supposed to say, okay, I don't know what bracha to make on the food, shahakol. No, you're supposed to look it up, find out, ask what the bracha. You don't use Shahakol, that we say that you make a shahakol when you don't know what bracha to make, that's only when you're stuck and you have no clarity what to do.
Right.
But when you have the ability to figure things out, you're supposed to figure things out. So the Gemara says, "Achoshish begrono lo yarenu b'shem etchila b'Shabbat." On Shabbat, the way Rashi learns the Gemara, don't go ahead and put take this olive oil mixed together with this beet juice. Don't put it into your mouth like in the beginning. You put it into your mouth with the intention of just goggling that, because then everybody sees that you're doing it for the purpose of refuah. Everybody sees you're doing it and refers, you understand. You people see why you goggle. It looks like you're leaving it in your mouth. So it's recognizable why you're leaving it and you're not swallowing it. So people think it looks like you're doing it for medical purposes. That's what you shouldn't do. But because and you're not swallowing it. If you're not swallowing it, everybody sees. If you're not swallowing it, what are you doing it for? You're doing it for medical purposes. So that you also shouldn't do on Shabbos. Now, but if you go ahead and you take it, you put it in your mouth for the purpose of what? Of swallowing it, then you could go ahead and do it on Shabbos. And even if you go ahead and leave it a little bit in your mouth and you gargle it a little bit, but the fact that you're drinking from it and you're swallowing it, it's not clear that you're doing it for medical purposes. When is it clear that you're doing it for medical purposes? If you go ahead and you gargle it. What do you call it? You gargle it, what's the right word? You gargle it and you don't swallow it. So then it's clear that you're doing it for medical purposes. But when you put this thing in your mouth and you're swallowing it, you're saying a Bore Priya 8 on this drink. But then it's not clear. And then you decide you want to leave it in your throat. You're gonna leave it in your throat a little bit to help your. Then it's not clear that you're doing it. It's not clear to anybody. It's not, this type of act is not clear that it's for medical purposes. For instance, let's say someone has a cold and they say chicken soup is good for a cold, right? Right? They say chicken soup. I don't know if the Sfardim ever heard of such a thing, right? But the Ashkenazim, they say chicken soup is good for a cold. So if you're gonna have chicken soup, no one's gonna say, it's not clear that you're having chicken soup. It's not a medicine. It's not clear that you're having this for medical purposes, even though your intent is for medical purposes. Even though your reason why you're having the chicken soup is because you have a cold. But that's not clear that the act of chicken soup is not the act of medicine. So therefore, the same thing, if you take this drink, even though if you take a drink and you plan on swallowing some of the drink. So therefore, even if you gargle some of it, it's not clear that it's done for people don't see that it's medical purposes, and therefore it's fine, and therefore you're all right. So the Gemara says, you could put a lot of oil and you swallow, and then you swallow it, and then you could do on Shabbos. And even once you do that, you can even gargle it a little bit. Pshita, the Gemara says, it's not obvious. What's the chiddush that I could do that on Shabbos? Of course, if I'm doing it that way, that I'm going ahead and I'm going to swallow it, of course I could do that. So the Gemara says, "Mao the tema kivan de refuah." Since I'm doing it for refuah, since I'm doing it, and the pshita, and also pshita, the Gemara's question is pshita. The oil is the main thing. So if the oil is the main thing, so the Gemara's question is, why does Shmuel and Rabbi Yochanan have to tell us that you make a Bore Priya 8 on this oil? The oil is the main ingredient, so it's obvious to make a Bore Priya 8 because you put a lot of oil into this. So the Gemara concludes how we're going to end today. The Gemara says, "Mal the same. You might have thought even the refuah kamachave. You had a mind to drink this for what? For medical purposes. You know why you drank it. You wanted to drink it just to help your problem with your throat. Maybe you shouldn't make a bracha at all because you're taking it for medical purposes. Kamash Malan, the Gemara teaches us, since you're enjoying it, you're enjoying the drink. It's true it's for medical purposes. if you take a medication, and let's say you must, from this Gemara, it would seem, let's say a certain syrup, a certain something that's cherry flavored, or certain different things, that there's a flavor and you're enjoying, you have the benefit, even though you're taking it for medical purposes. From this Gemara, it says that you would make a bracha. At least we'll see. You have to see if it's comparable or not. But this Gemara says that even though your intention of drinking this is for medical purposes, but since you're enjoying this drink, you're having pleasure from this drink, you have to say a bracha on the drink. So that's what, so in general, we don't make a bracha on medicine, but if, let's say, it will be a type of medicine that was sugar-coated with certain things, that there's enjoyment, a flavor, or something, it would seem from this Gemara, I mean, you would say a bracha. Tosfos says, if a person drinks a liquid, if the liquid is bad to drink, and you don't have any benefit, you don't make a bracha. But if you do have a benefit from it, even though you're doing it for medical purposes, so you would have to say a bracha. Okay, I want to wish everyone should be well, not need to have any medication, not to have any questions of taking medicine, or all the best. The best thing is not to need the doctors and not to need medication. Have a great day, everybody. All the best. Thank you. Shalom.
תודה
Shalom.
רבה. תודה.
Shalom, everybody. Bye-bye.
ביי.